find a better or more willing partner than Senator Lee. He is outstanding in that regard.
I agree with you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Kaine.
Thank you. Simple question for each of you. Who instigated the current war in Gaza?
I would say Hamas did by...
Mr. Regas?
I would agree with my colleague.
Mr. Whitaker?
Yeah, October 7th was an invasion by Hamas.
So you didn't have any problem saying who instigated the war in Gaza, but none of you would be candid about who instigated the war in Ukraine. And what you said is the reason, and I'm going to be fair to Mr. Regas, I didn't hear you be equivocal about that. I heard Mr. Whitaker and Mr. Landau. What you said is there's sensitive and delicate negotiations going on right now, and I'm not here to label. There's a sensitive and delicate negotiation going on between Israel, Gaza, and other parties right now about extending a ceasefire, and it's really important to Israel, and it's really important to hostage families, and it's really important to Palestinians. It's really important in the Red Sea because the Houthis have stopped firing into the Red Sea during the ceasefire, and if we extend it, we have reason to believe that the Houthis will continue to not fire at U.S. ships. So I'm noticing this. Senator Shaheen and I were just at a hearing with the Deputy Secretary of Defense, Mr. Bridge Colby, and he said the same thing. He was asked who was responsible for the war in Ukraine, who instigated it. Well, there's a sensitive, delicate negotiation. I don't really want to opine about who instigated it. So I asked him who instigated the war in Gaza, and he said it was Hamas. We got to be willing to tell the truth. And I know answering the question truthfully might make a superior uncomfortable, but Americans deserve the truth. And if we're voting to confirm people for really critical positions, and you've all served in important positions, and you're all nominated for really important positions, we've got to have a sense that you're going to be truthful. And that the truthful nature of your comments may or may not be listened to, your advice may or may not be followed, but what you owe to your commander-in-chief, what you owe to the country, what you owe to the oath you take, is to be truthful. And I just can't help but notice it was so easy to answer the question about who instigated the war in Gaza, and so difficult for just folks to be plain and answer the question about who instigated the war in Ukraine. Mr. Regas, I have a question for you about Schedule F, and my colleague, Senator Van Hollen, has already mentioned it. And Schedule F was the first Trump term proposal. It's now Schedule PC, and you indicated there's some similarities, there's some differences. You were part of both OPM and the OMB during the first Trump term, and the guidance in that agency suggested there was a desire to reclassify 80% of employees in those agencies from traditional political service to Schedule F. Do you have a sense of what the likely percentage reclassification would be at the Department of State under Trump administration term 2?
Thank you for the question, Senator. And again, I enjoyed our meeting. I think you were the first senator I met with in this process, so I got off to a great start there. I don't know that I can put a number on that. I can tell you how I went about the process at OPM. At the time, I was actually the acting director of the Office of Personnel Management.
Please do.
So I had to implement the President's executive order on Schedule F. And what we did is we asked our career chief human capital officer and our HR folks to look at the position descriptions to see which positions were policy making, policy influencing, confidential, or policy advocating positions.
And was that with a goal to getting to this 80% will be Schedule F?
No, that was my understanding. The 80% number, I'm not sure where that comes from, but I know, I think you may be referring to what happened at OMB, where OMB Director Vogt at the time did a similar analysis and came up with that number.
Was there a target number at OPM?
There was not. We just asked them to look at the position descriptions and let those speak for themselves.
How does Schedule PC differ from Schedule F?
Schedule PC, to my understanding, I think the major difference is that it provides for a competitive hiring process.
But folks can still be fired and not really have recourse to challenge a termination.
Yes, they would.
Yeah, and that's pretty important. Right now, I'll just say this and conclude. We see the administration firing probationary employees because probationary employees don't have the same access to challenge it.
Right.
what that means is it's a war on veterans, because probationary employees are either brand new people, like right out of college, or career switchers. 30% of the federal workforce is veterans. They're career switchers. They tend to come in after serving 15 or 20 years, and they're probationary, even though they may be 45 or 50 years old. And that's why President Trump, in his first 6 weeks in office, has fired more veterans than any president in the history of the United States. And I think that's a disgrace, not a distinction. But I appreciate you sharing the difference between Schedule F and what Schedule PC is, and I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Kaine. There's nothing to yield back, but I will accept it in any event. Thank you. Senator Scott.